Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Plan B Success. We have Victoria Wieck with us today, and she's joining us all the way from San Diego, California. And Victoria is an author and, more importantly, a jewelry designer. But before that, just like everybody else, she went to school, got her degrees, went into corporate America, and then she made her pivot. So let's learn about Victoria and her story from herself. So welcome, Victoria.
So glad to be here. I'm excited to share an amazing conversation with you. I love the whole thought of Plan B because it's exactly what happened to me.
Awesome. So in your words, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I grew up in South Korea in a very small, sleepy little town by the beach, seaside village. It was very idyllic. At the time, we had everything we kind of needed, or in the child's mind, you have everything you need. You have food, you have parents, you have the beach. What else can you ask for? But my parents had a different dream in that at that time in South Korea, girls were not, how would I say it? They preferred boys. And my parents, had a larger than most people's homes. And people used to think that our home was like the orphanage. There was an orphanage behind us, but 100% of the kids that were being dropped off in front of our door were little infants, girls. So my father, who had 4 girls, decided that the dream life for his daughters would be better fulfilled, coming to America. So we came to America, and lo and behold, he found out the very next day that all his assets were frozen in both countries, and that the money transferred over got frozen, and the money that we left behind got frozen. So we started our lives with $30 at that time, which was, as you can imagine, it was pretty rough for a few years. And, I was told over and over again, the fastest path to the American dream was to get hyper educated and to get jobs with a lot of upward mobility. If your kid was smart enough, there could be a doctor, lawyer, all these other things. And so I tried it. I did it. I was a great student. I, really killed myself to learn to speak English, make friends, get great grades. I graduated at the top of my class. I actually went to UCLA and USC, got top jobs. And what I found was that after I got promoted a couple of times, I was really suffocating in terms of emotional freedom. I felt like I didn't really have freedom. I was told what to do almost every day, how to achieve success for the company. And then if you should do all those things, you get a little raise, in exchange for even more hours. So I felt like I was fighting the rat race. So one day I literally had a burnout because I was commuting about 90 minutes each way. So I just thought that was not sustainable. And I was doing the same thing to my parents, to my kids that my parents were doing to me, which was they left their kids, their 5 kids at home to fend for themselves because they had no choice. I had a choice, and I was doing that with my kids. So I pretty much quit kind of cold turkey that day and started my small business, which was my plan B. And as you know, the rest of it is, it's pretty good.
So, let's go
That's my
back.
story.
Let's go back and revisit where you got educated. You always wanted to pursue literature or art, but you ended up going the business route. How did you choose business?
Right. I didn't choose business. What happened was, you're right. I excelled in art and literature. I've always, when I grew up in South Korea, the world is so small. I mean, we lived in a tiny little island that didn't get any TV connection. So even though we had a TV, we actually didn't have any access to news or anything. So that's what I thought I was going to be always. And then when I got plugged to America, my father said that since I was the oldest of the 5 children in an Asian family, that comes with a huge responsibility, that I needed to get a real job. Artists, according to him, didn't make any money until they died. And especially in America, where I didn't know anybody and I didn't know their taste in art, that I was never going to succeed. So he advised me strongly to go get a degree in business. So I did do that. I went ahead and got my degree in economics at UCLA. And then after that, it was like right around the recession time. And the other thing too is I really didn't love any of the jobs that I was offered, such as like a loan officer trainee to sales trainee for this or that. I didn't really love any of the jobs that came with that degree. So I then went to get my degree, I got scholarships. So actually I got some grants and scholarships, and I was getting, I was making actually $1,000 a month or something between all the different scholarships that I had, plus my work. So I went to my graduate school, and I was told there that my marketing professor there told me that I was not going to be very good at marketing because I didn't understand the nuances of what makes great marketers kind of exceptional. He didn't think I had that. So he asked me to just go ahead and get a degree. The professor, suggested that I should get a degree in finance because that's more absolute and finite, and that I could always go, become a CFO of somebody. And so I did that. As you can see, I was a pretty good listener since I was young. So I did that, and then I actually pursued, after I graduated. So it wasn't like my choices at that time, but I listened to all the advisors and people who supposedly were, more experienced than wise. And so none of that actually really worked out for me. So I ended up having to find a plan B.
So how long did you work in corporate America?
About 5 years. And, I worked, I gave it a really good, I was actually good at this too, by the way. I took my old boss from like $150 million to a $400 million company. It wasn't just me, but that company was also started out by an immigrant from Morocco. And he was growing by leaps and bounds, but he kind of got stuck at that 150 million because, he was a high school graduate, didn't really understand when a business is like over $100 million, you really do need, real CPAs and accountants and a strategy to grow even further. And he didn't have that. So I came in at the right time, and, I made a ton of mistakes on his dime as well, but he was very generous about that. So basically, in that 5-year span, I went from like an entry-level person to the director of marketing to VP of marketing to doing, marketing and finance for him. And, each time I went from like 150 to $200 million, 200 million to 250, which happened very quickly. I got like $5,000 raise, but it came with, $5,000 a year raise. But it came with, me working. I left for my work about 6:45 every morning, got there about, 8 o'clock. And I was the first one in. I left about 7:30, got home about 8:30. And I took briefcases of work home, Monday through Sunday. So as you can see, the burnout was inevitable at some point.
So when you decided to make the shift and start something of your own, how much of thought went into that decision, and how long did it take for you to before you actually jumped in?
Oh, it was, I want to say it was pretty instantaneous. And in terms of jumping in, because my goal was so simple. At that time, I said to myself, my parents brought me to America so I could be whoever I wanted to be, and I could do whatever I wanted to do. And yet I was listening to everybody. And I also looked back at my life in East Los Angeles. It was really rough. Our whole apartment rent was like $100 a month. So I thought if I could make $3,000 a month and I could work, 20 to 30 hours a week, and those hours are my choosing, that was going to be my dream life. And when I did the numbers, $3,000 a month, I didn't think it was completely out of reach. I thought, okay, well, in those days, back in 1989, 90, we didn't have internet. We didn't have, a lot of things that we all take for granted. We didn't have it. So we had things like direct marketing, direct mail, all of those. And the conversion rates at that time were like, if you send out 100 direct mail pieces, you'll get 10 people responding, and you'll get a couple of people who will actually buy from you. So I thought, okay, well, if I sent out like 50 pieces of mail every day, and I got like 2 people, 3 people responding like in a month, that was going to be my money. And I didn't think that that was completely impossible to do. And I also felt like in the worst case scenario, and I didn't meet the $3,000 a month, and I only got like $2,000 a month, I could live with that. So it wasn't like I set out to create this $1 million business. I just simply wanted to exist and just live my life the way I wanted to live.
And then, from there took on your jewelry design company, and it's come a long way. You're also on Shop HQ now. How has that journey been, and how has that evolution been? Was it something that you dreamed of, and did it meet your expectations? And what were some of the ups and downs that you faced?
So I was actually petrified of being on TV. I didn't want to be on TV. I just thought that when you're on TV, everyone's going to know who you are. I didn't want that kind of publicity. So the TV thing, it took me about 6 years for me. From the time they actually contacted me, it took me 6 years to actually make a decision to go on it, because I was petrified of doing that. But in the beginning, going back to the very beginning times, jewelry is one of the industry that does require a lot of money to start. For example, you need inventory. You need, when you have your inventory, you need a floor to ceiling safe, like that's fireproof and bulletproof. And then once you have that, you need like jeweler's insurance and alarm system and all this stuff that a normal business doesn't have. So it was kind of daunting task at that time. But what I did was, when you, I would say necessity, when you have really no other option, right? You start to invent things, invent ways to get the same job done. So what happened was instead of making samples, samples basically can kill you. You got to make new molds and all that. And every mold at that time cost about $290 to $1,200, depending on the complexity of the mold. And that's if you knew somebody in the business. So what happened was, I wasn't in a position where I could have like 20, 30 designs made just to find out what people would want, right? Because that would be a lot of money and it's very high risk. I mean, it could be that nobody wanted anything. And even if you found 3 styles that sold, you can't really actually go to somebody and say, carry my line with 3 styles. You'd have to do some more. So what I ended up doing was I ended up sketching out designs, and I ended up going to all the major department stores like Neiman Marcus, Saks, Macy's, and asked the department store managers, like, if you had something like this that came there, would you be able to sell it? So I was able to get a very little preliminary, I guess, market research. And so what I found is that when you're really vulnerable at that time, I mean, I look like a kid, at that time. And I was a kid, to be honest. And I would just tell people, look, I don't have any money. I really want to start my business. And I'm very excited about like coming up with something brand new. And I'm wondering if you could help me, just guide me a little bit, because I know you guys see a lot of customers all the time. And this is a very expensive area, where people buy jewelry. A lot of those department store managers, like they actually did a lot to give me not only information, but they actually pre-sold a lot of my pieces to some of their best customers, who ended up becoming like one-of-a-kind piece customers. And so, that vulnerability, just being honest and authentic, I think helped me in those very early years. I didn't even know how to fib, at that time. I was just so new to the business world. And so that was my beginning. And then once I got into the Neiman's and the Saks and the Harrods of London, all that, HSN, who was actually looking to upgrade their image, upgrade their brands, and when trying to really get some high-end brands to their stores, to their TV network, they contacted me. I was #1 performing brand at Neiman's, nationwide. So at that time, my risk was, well, if HSN was such a TV industry was such in its embryo state at that time. So, if Neiman Marcus, on the other hand, was like sort of like the epitome of the status symbol. So if I sell the same thing to HSN and it didn't sell, then I would be dropped by all the other department stores. So I had to really think about how I was going to do that. And in those days, there was a real definitive line between the snob appeal companies versus the value oriented companies. So whatever was sold at Walmart, Neiman Marcus didn't want it, back and forth. So it took a little bit of working with them and coming up with different collections, different brands to maximize all of it. But, in the end, by the time I got to HSN, I was on almost all major airline duty-free, like in-flight duty-free, airport gift shops, cruise lines, and all major department stores, around the world. So it wasn't like I pitched them, they pitched me.
And how's business now?
It's great. I think once you build that premium brand, so I left HSN in 2017 after 19 years and 11 months. I was supposed to have been there 20 years, but because I had a 10-year contract that ended. I was over 60 at that time, and I just kind of needed to kind of close that chapter. And my intention was completely retire from that TV, because TV is very demanding. Live TV is really demanding on your schedule, and you just got to be always on. For every 2 hours of live TV, there's about 8 hours of prep work that
Right.
go with that, because you can say something, and you're really judged on a dollars per minute basis. So this is why most TV shows only have 2 hours a day, So, and I would be on like 8 to 10 hours a day whenever I was on, and that is just very intense. So I retired to write a book. I've always wanted to, I saw my world through books when I was in Korea, and I still did that until, I do that until now. Like I have this incredible curiosity about other people, other cultures, and I'm not just talking about like reading about books. I just want to have a real conversation with like a real person from these countries. So I wanted to write that book, and I thought, if I don't do it now, when would I ever do it? So I went ahead and retired in 2017, and then I wrote my first book, which was a science fiction. And then in order to market the book, I ended up networking with a lot of different editors, agents, and many of them actually saw me, like they knew me from HSN, and they're like, why aren't you writing a memoir or how-to book? And Rajiv, I thought my life, since I lived my life, it's pretty boring to me, and I didn't think that was going to be a very interesting read for a lot of other people. So I kind of poo-pooed it until COVID hit. Then I thought, what, maybe I should. There are some things I know that every business owner should know. And my main message is that, your plan A was never supposed to work out, really. Have you ever watched a movie called The Exotic Marigold Hotel?
Yes, I have.
Do you remember there was a line, it's my favorite line in that movie. There is a line there where that woman from Harry Potter, she was a governess, and she sits there. There's a cleaning lady, doing all her brooms and stuff, and they're all like kind of thinking about like what went wrong in their life. Mm-hmm. And somebody said, I did everything I was supposed to do. I saved my money, and I worked my rear end off. I did all this stuff, and I'm here. And she says, well, when all those great plans were never supposed to work out. It's after all those things go out the window, the good stuff happens. Mm-hmm. Do you remember that line?
Yes, yes.
I don't have the exact line, but something like your plan A is never supposed to work out. Mm-hmm. But after all that go out the window is when the good stuff really happened. And I think that's what happened to me. And it's not just my journey that way. It's even in my marketing strategy to just finding, I really wanted to find like a certain customer. For example, I pitched Galeries Lafayette for years. It's like the premier store in France, and I always wanted to be there. And they just didn't get me. So they didn't like me. And so I just like, okay, fine. I'll just give up on that. And then somehow I ended up at Harrods London instead, which was just this. Then somebody tried to pitch me to make the stuff that goes to Harrods of London. And he was actually from France, and he was telling me that, they supplied the Galeries Lafayette, they do all this stuff, And so I ended up going to both places, actually, the Harrods and Galeries Lafayette, through a back door. But by going through the back door, because Galleries Lafayette, I was willing to give them just all kinds of terms. I was willing to like do anything and everything they wanted me to do, and they still didn't want me. So what ended up happening is later on, one of their suppliers came to me in order to supply my stuff to Harrods of London because they were all in the same place. I mean, this company did work for Chanel and all these other brands, and they ended up getting me best terms at the end, and I ended up going there anyway. So a lot of times when something doesn't happen to you like organically, it's supposed to be that way. It's just like when I was in corporate America and I couldn't find a way to, I kept thinking to myself, okay, here I have 2 master's degrees from major universities, and I'm, not only just bilingual, but I'm also multicultural, and I'm willing to work my rear end off. And everywhere I went, I had great successes. And yet I didn't understand why I kept having to work harder to make less money, like proportionally less percentage of money. And I thought, maybe this isn't cut out for me, and sometimes you got to listen to those little signs and kind of like believe in yourself and take a leap of faith, because the worst thing that could happen is you got to start over.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the books that you've written, your first one was Shattered Sky, right? And then there's another one
Right.
that you've done.
It's called $1 Million Hobbies. And so Shattered Sky is a science fiction about, and I only want to talk about this just a little bit because I want to tell you why I wrote the book. It's not like I just want to go make $1 million. Basically, I have seen human conditions and human suffering from all angles, meaning that, when I go to China or when I go to all these other countries where, gemstones are mined and cut and manufactured, I've seen how some people live on literally like $100 a year, and entire families can, live on that. And then I've seen how, people get injured and all that. And, some people actually never complain. I mean, they're very happy to have those jobs. I see people here in the United States with abundance of life, and yet they're suffering mentally, like complaining about all the things they don't have. So I thought, I wanted to write a book about what human beings are capable of when they're so pushed. So I wrote this book, and I'm a huge fan of science fiction, but I wrote the book in the future so that it wouldn't be politically attacked. It wouldn't be any bias. And the protagonist in this book is a young girl that doesn't really have a lot of experience in life. So she's actually just absorbing and, seeing things in the periphery. So I wrote the book, and, once and I told everybody, Reggie, like, I'm a very practical person. So I told everyone, I've never written a book before. I've done jewelry design all my life. I mean, the only thing I've ever written was maybe a few lines of marketing material, but I haven't even written a blog. So I don't know anything about writing. So just give me some feedback. And I've also heard that everybody's first books suck. So mine probably sucks even more. So now I want to get it out of my system. Just help me a little bit about guiding me. And so I would just, send it to them. Like, I'm not trying to sell the book, just, give me some feedback. And it turns out I ended up with some great feedback from the publishers of HarperCollins and also Penguin and Random House. I actually met them face to face, and it was selected as one of the 45 manuscripts that they wanted to read. And I got some really great feedback. In fact, they had encouraged me to write sequels to the book so I can actually market them as a sequel. And then when I wrote my how-to book, I kind of wrote it more as a blog. It was a series of chapters written as a blog that I was going to put on my website. And when I asked, some of the agents, like, do you think that this could be an actual book? And because I was just going to self-publish it on my blogs, on my own website. And I approached 11 different agents that I had met in trying to market the how-to book, the Shattered Sky. They, referred me to some friends who specialize in how-to books, and they're telling me that they could get me a huge advance for my book. So it's right now I'm rewriting the manuscript. So those 2 books, but I want to make this very clear to you. On TV, we are I get paid on a dollars per minute basis. So, it's based on how many dollars you can do on a minute per minute. And these dollars per minute are very high numbers you have to keep. So obviously it's so much easier for me to make money being on TV for another few hours. I mean, selling a book for $10 a copy is not something that's going to make me rich. I know that. But I wrote it because at this point in my life, I feel like, yes, I've worked my rear end off and I've given it my best, but I also feel like that I've been very lucky that I was able to achieve my dreams to a certain extent. And that I want to share that. I want to share my experience, all the good, bad, and the ugly, and the tough part. I want to share that with everyone because I think that there's joy in that. So I'm kind of excited about that, about, the release of both books, actually.
So this one, the Living the American Dream Your Way, can you talk a little bit more about that?
Well, that's the title has been changed to $1 Million Hobbies because
Okay.
basically I took my hobby to a multi-million-dollar business. Yeah.
Awesome.
And I have a
Awesome.
podcast that's dedicated to that. So, I bring people who have taken their hobbies like cooking, baking, gardening to multi-million-dollar businesses. And I actually truly believe that if you have your heart in it, that every hobby is worth at least $1 million.
And what's the name of your podcast?
$1 Million Hobbies.
Okay, awesome. All right.
So the book is named $1 Million Hobbies and the podcast is $1 Million Hobbies. Yeah.
So in terms of your jewelry business, is that still continuing right now?
Yes. If you go to my website, I talk about jewelry, but there's no jewelry to buy. And that's by design. My jewelry is being sold by so many different, people. Like I'm on Amazon, Etsy, Shop HQ. It's just all over the world. So I don't feel like I need to push people to buy things on my website. So my website is mostly educational and engagement site right now. So, it's part of my legacy too. I don't want to have, the whole world is full of people that when you go on a website, buy this or buy that. I mean, sometimes when you're shopping for something, the pop-up ads come up to buy something else. So I felt like, people just want to chill out and just really actually get educated about anything. And so I actually have a lot of freebies up there and where people can actually just engage. And I'm actually upgrading my website this week to put in more little videos, and because I found out a lot of people don't want to read, they want to actually watch a video. So I'm doing like bunch of little mini videos that are 2 minutes long type thing that they can download for free.
Awesome. And for people that want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to reach you?
They can come to two ways: victoriawieck.com, where they can find out everything about my journey, about my world, and they can sign up for a bunch of different things. Or they can come to milliondollarhobbies.com, where they can really, if anybody's interested in starting a business and you don't know where to start, or you've already started a business and you're struggling, I can probably, I usually give like a 20-minute free consultation, and that's true free consultation. You don't have to buy anything or do anything. I just am sad sometimes I can't give you more than that, but usually even within 20 minutes, they do get a very clear direction.
Awesome. Wonderful. Well, Victoria, you have a tremendous journey, very inspiring, and you're still working on contributing and reaching out to more people and benefiting people, which is also very inspiring. We wish you the very best in your future as you take on these new paths in terms of your writing, your podcasting, and reaching out to people. Before I let you go, one takeaway for the listeners, anything that you'd like to share from your experiences?
Well, I think that, when you listen to shows like this one, by the way, I love your show in that all of us have some setbacks in our lives, right? And setbacks are normal and we are supposed to have them. I believe that, no matter what religion you believe in, even if you don't believe in religion, I think that human beings were DNA coded to learn from our mistakes. And anything, like whether it's a mistake or a setback that you didn't design, it's a stepping stone to success. So embrace them and learn from it. And secondly, when somebody has a great story, like my story, I've been told is very inspiring. When I do speaking engagements and I'm being told how inspiring my story is, they're encouraged, they're motivated and inspired and all that. But remember one thing, only actions result in something. So take all this motivation from, whoever, believe in yourself. Don't be afraid to take that first step, because nothing good ever happens inside your comfort zone. And just embrace everything that life has to offer. And I think that in the end, you're going to look back and realize it's really an amazing journey. And I think also when we talk about success, don't think so much about money. Look at my story. I just wanted to make $3,000 a month. And I've overachieved that. I mean, the money was all like real bonus. I really can tell you, I didn't strive for that. But so I would just say that plan B is supposed to be when the good stuff is supposed to happen. And if you're right now listening to this podcast, wondering, what I found too, Reggie, like the higher your pay is, the harder it is for you to jump, the harder it is for you to actually have a faith in your plan B. But don't be afraid, because plan B is when the good stuff actually happens.
Awesome. Well, thank you for such inspiring words. Thank you for sharing your story with us. We wish you the very best, and we will keep in touch. So thanks a lot for joining today.
Well, thank you. Thank you.